Ivy. If you skipped buying just one skirt, you could change a rural girl's fate. Dalise isn't as lucky as you. She wasn't born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Education is her only way out. The Ivy family doesn't even miss this small amount of money. What difference does it make if you help 99 or 100 people? My childhood friend, who had always been by my side, was now speaking up for another girl. Julian frowned, his tone laced with subtle reproach. Ivy, it's something you could do with just a flick of your wrist, and yet you refuse to help? When did you become so cold-hearted? The comments started flashing on the screen again. The heroine is finally making her debut. Looking forward to the mutual redemption between the poor girl and the loyal rich young master. The cannon fodder female lead just got a big package of heartache and suffering. Countdown to her downfall. Bankruptcy. Bloodletting. Kidney removal. Eye gouging. And after death, her ashes scattered. But why should my life be merely a side story for others? Ivy, if you bought one less skirt, you could change the destiny of a girl from the countryside. Dalise isn't as fortunate as you. She wasn't born with wealth. Education is the only way for her. The Ivy family doesn't lack that little bit of money. What's the difference if you help 99 or 100? Julian, my childhood friend who was always by my side, was now defending another girl. Julian furrowed his brows, a trace of mild reproach in his voice. Ivy, is there something so simple that you can't bring yourself to help with? When did you become so cold and heartless? The comments flashed on the screen again. Although the romance between the male and female leads is nice, I feel bad for the second female lead. In the beginning, she's just the ATM for Julian's family. In the middle, she's the organ donor for the heroine. Later, her family is ruined, and she dies on the street. How is the second female led miserable? No one forced her to sacrifice. She knew the love was misplaced but still tried to use her power to wedge herself between the hero and heroine. Everything she got, she deserved. The real victim is the heroine. Her sick mother. Her disabled father. And before meeting the hero, she never wore a new outfit. The hero is pitiful too. He had to live with the one person he hated the most for 10 years because of family interests. I raised my eyes to look at the heroine. As described by the comments, Dalise stood at the door of the classroom. Her slightly dark and thin face framed by large, watery eyes. She fidgeted nervously, twisting the faded corners of her shirt. And pants too large for her. Ill-fitting. The comments claimed that fate had defeated my childhood friend. That Dalise was the wild lily growing in Julian's barren heart. As for me, I was his most despised and frivolous rich heir. A flower of wealth who had never known suffering. Once Julian spread his wings, the first thing he would do was overthrow the Ivy family that weighed down on him. He would slowly devour the Ivy family, destroy my life, and force my father to his death. 10 years of acquaintance. And Julian naturally held more weight in my heart than a few random comments. But he was no match for my father, who had raised me, or the future of the entire Ivy family. I stared at his eyes. What if I don't agree? Who's willing to fight for a disgusting character like you? I knew the heroine's bitter life wouldn't be easy. The second female lead dies. And she deserves it. She's been cruel her whole life. What hurt more than the comments was the flash of disgust and impatience that appeared in Julian's eyes. You're the little princess of the Ivy family. The only daughter of a city's richest man. Who could force you to do something you don't want? I understood his words. And suddenly, all the petty things that never made sense before fell into place. Repeated birthday gifts. Oversized sneakers. Ignored food restrictions. Forgotten breakfasts. Dealing with one purse and doesn't take much effort. Julian was the one who first reached out. And it was he who had gained the most from the Ivy family. He complained about my arrogance and the Ivy family's dominance, yet it was still him. He even expected me to stake my life and my family's future to serve as background for their so-called love story? Who did they think they were? This ungrateful childhood friend who needed him? Julian was right. As a golden otter from a prestigious family, so many people were scrambling to flatter me. I didn't need him as a friend. I scoffed coldly. Julian, so what right do you have to tell me not to buy one less skirt? How I spend my money is none of your business. Even if I throw it into the Huapue River just to hear a splash. That's my choice. Why should I pay for your moral blackmail? The comments exploded. What's going on? Why isn't the second female lead following the script? If the heroine doesn't transfer to the main school, how will the rest of the plot unfold? That damn and female lead. She deserves to die 1,000 times. Julian, relying on our childhood friendship, had often made demands of me. Considering our long-standing relationship, I usually complied. But now, when I publicly embarrassed him, he didn't even care about his own pride. Instead, he gazed at Dalise, full of pity. The girl's dark, glossy eyes revealed embarrassment, anxiety, and dependence. He turned back to look at me, his tone laced with unmistakable disappointment. Ivy, dibasa orosai. That was really hurtful. Hurtful? The Ivy family had helped raise the Percival family. We had known each other for 10 years. Yet all Julian gave me in return was his mad and revenge. And Dalise stood there, not having to say a word, yet able to command Julian to fight her battles. Was it his loyalty that hurt me? Or the truth I spoke? Dalise just needs a transfer slot to the main school. You could buy a small gift with your pocket money for Arthur. Get him to cheer up, and casually mention it. Ivy, how can you be so heartless? Julian's family just invested in a project that earned a lot. And Julian's a kind soul, why not help this girl personally? A mocking voice came from behind. That's even worse for her self-esteem. What level is the Julian family? How could they intervene in Hangdi's main campus affairs? If it weren't for the Ivy family, Julian wouldn't even be qualified to sit in the top class. Ethan, who had missed the entire morning self-study session, had no idea how long he had been leaning against the back door, listening. A gleam of teasing shone on his handsome face. As he walked past Julian, he deliberately nudged him with his shoulder. Right, Julian? The comments went wild. Such a TS villain with a sharp tongue. Ethan isn't a real villain though, is he? He hasn't done anything truly evil, just disagrees with the hero and heroine. Can we still defend him? In the later stages, he cleaned up so many messes for the second female lead and vowed to stay single for her. Actually, he's a pitiful character too. The second female lead only sees the hero. He'll never get the chance to express his little feelings. Was I seeing things? Or were the comments going crazy? Ethan, who usually looked at me with a cold glare or snapped at me with biting words. Did he have feelings? Hard to say. But there was no doubt that the grudges were real. Ethan was the heir to the H-City family. He had only come to A-City to accompany his elderly family members. Since he transferred to Hangdi in the second semester of junior high, I had been trailing behind him as his constant second place. Exams, competitions, you name it, Ethan always outshone me. To verify the comments, I called out to him, Ethan. He turned with a stiff face, his tone sharp. What? Are you going to defend your childhood friend? 10. I paused for a moment, remembering how Ethan always seized any opportunity to make cutting remarks about Julian. The Julian family was several social tiers below the Ethan family, and Julian had always been the one to quietly endure. Most of the time, it was me who stood up for him, throwing a few words back at Ethan. And naturally, the fire was often directed at me. This same scene kept repeating. And no wonder Ethan was walking around with a sour face. Even Julian cast a glance at me that seemed to carry a silent expectation. I sneered inwardly. Hadn't I once charged into battle for Julian? But this time, I gave Ethan a thumbs up. I think you're absolutely right. Ethan's momentary shock quickly faded, and he responded inferiorly, having fulfilled me. Who cares about your opinion? Such a stubborn brat. All talk and no action. But I bet he's secretly enjoying this. I thought. Whose ears are so red they're about to bleed? I won't say who. I tilted my head and, sure enough, saw Ethan's ears flushed bright red, even his long neck taking on a faint pink hue. Our eyes met, and Ethan quickly turned his head, once again turning his attention to Julian. Julian, you let on a low sigh. When asking for something, you need to know how to ask, don't make a show of it in front of everyone. Trying to burn your first love at the stake. Your filthy thoughts. Ethan clicked his tongue. They're so obvious. Under the watchful eyes of our classmates. Julian's face slowly turned red. Ethan. This has nothing to do with you. Ethan scoffed. This is herI. You're not even qualified to challenge me. He pointed lazily at the door at the front of the classroom. Bringing in outsiders without permission could get you into trouble. Julian, having lost face, shifted his gaze back to me. Ethan gave me a sarcastic smile. That's the rule, right? Ivy? I nodded in acknowledgement. You really are the discipline committee member, aren't you? The scene at school had resulted in my uncle, Wu, picking me up after school, but now he had turned into my father. The previously quiet comment section suddenly came alive. Make way. The most pitiful supporting character makes their debut. That business magnate who got dragged down by his daughter, thinking until his last breath about how to save the supporting female lead. Anyone feel sorry for the stepmother? She lived a whole life faithfully, never once hearing the female lead call her mom. And before she died, she asked to have her ashes sent back to her hometown. Speaking of which, the male lead's methods are pretty ruthless. He buried tons of landmines in Ivy's family early on. Just a small question. Does no one think the male lead's a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing? This is basically the modern version of the farmer and the snake, right? Can we really blame the male lead? All I can say is the female lead is a ghost. And whoever gets close to her is doomed. My father waved his hand in front of me. Evie. Julian's father tells me you two had a falling out? I snapped back to reality and met my father's concerned gaze. What happened? Did Julian's family bully you? My father never liked Julian, though he never said it outright. His subtle hints made it impossible to fool anyone. Perhaps this was one of the reasons Julian resented him. Thinking of the comments, a sharp pain pierced my chest. Dad. He smiled gently. I'm here. The whole thing with the comments felt so surreal. I couldn't be sure how to explain to my father that the world we lived in was just a book. I hesitated, then carefully sidestepped. Dad. I think I may have caused some trouble for you. Trouble? My father chuckled heartily. In a city, there's no such thing as a disaster that's not the fault of the ignorant. And certainly none that are my daughter's fault. I grasped my father's broad hand and briefly summarized the argument from today. I just wanted to keep an eye on Julian. Make sure he sent people out of the school, since his family is still acting under Ivy's family's banner. But then I accidentally overheard him talking to Julian's dad on the phone. He called me arrogant and said Ivy's family uses power to suppress others. I even heard him ask if Julian's dad had done enough to trample Ivy's family into the mud. Julian said that once his family grew stronger, the first thing they'd do is eliminate Ivy's family. The comment section's response was much more heated than my father's. What the heck? What's going on? This scene wasn't in the original, right? Did I miss a memory or something? Why is the supporting female lead jumping out of the plot setup? When did she overhear the male lead's phone call? Is the female lead trying to crush the male lead in his cradle? Crush him? But without eradicating the roots. The spring breeze will blow, and the grass will grow again. I wanted to trade lives with Julian. To be like him now. Back home, Diana had already prepared a meal at the exact right time. All dishes I liked. When my mother was still around, these chores were done by the housemaids. She and my father were both always busy with endless calls and meetings. Even their last moments were spent on a flight to Chicago. I still remember my father's bloodshot eyes. He held me tightly in his arms, and his hot tears seeped into my neck, burning with a pain that reached deep into my chest. I'm sorry, Ivy. You're still so young and have already lost your mother. The one sitting on the plane should have been me. Since then, my father, feeling guilty, indulged me to the point where I lost all sense of limit. He had also suffered through the pain of losing his wife for 8 years, and had never started a new life. The year our father-daughter relationship was at its coldest, my father met Diana. I was rebellious, and he was tired. Diana, always surrounded by the kitchen and family life, was like an oasis in the desert. She quenched my father's thirst but turned me into a drifting log. I feared she would gradually take my mother's place. Even more, I feared that my father wouldn't just be mine anymore. But he was all I had left. And I was still the daughter no one in the family cared about. Even Julian knew that when the mother became wealthy, the children received abundant love. When my father became rich, I'd just get a whole bunch of siblings fighting for the inheritance. So, I was reluctant to let her into our lives. And my relationship with my father even neared a breaking point. Until, on my grandfather's deathbed, he grasped my hand, tears in his eyes, and told me my father had suffered far too much in these years. Seeing me silent, staring at my food without eating, Diana anxiously asked, "Ivy, is the food not to your liking? Should I make something else?" I looked up at this woman in her late 30s. She wasn't as glamorous as my mother, but had a gentler, more graceful demeanor. With her gentle eyes and a perfectly balanced figure, her smile revealed a pair of dimples. Thinking of the comments just now, I felt both shame and guilt flood my heart, my eyes growing moist. I picked up my bowl and shook my head. "Diana, I really like it." After dinner, Julian was dragged to the door by his father to apologize. The Julian family had risen to sudden wealth, but they couldn't compare to the Ivy family's generations of accumulation. The two families had no prior connection at all. Thanks to Percival's savvy investment, Julian could endure, and I was foolish enough to let it happen, which eventually led to us having some dealings. Over the years, the Julian family had made a considerable amount of money from the Ivy family, and Julian had competed with me. But that also depended on whether his father agreed. Perhaps after a scolding at home, Julian's expression was dark and uncertain. Percival slapped his son's forehead. "How many times have I told you? A man should have a broad mind, a generous heart, and should always be considerate of girls. And you? What did you do? You started arguing with Ivy, being young and full of spirit." Even though Julian restrained his natural impulses and made compromises, there were times when he still managed to irritate me. It was the same routine every time, no matter how many times they performed it. I had grown tired of it. "Julian's just trying to sponsor the poor students from the branch school to enter herI's main campus. It's not really an argument," I said casually. At once, Percival's face darkened, and he twisted Julian's arm, scolding him. "Do you even remember your surname? herI doesn't need your charity to sponsor students." Julian's pained expression, unable to voice his discomfort, looked completely different from his usual self. "Right, just lecturing at school. Sponsoring a female student with your personal funds, how is that not charitable?" I flashed a smile at Julian. "I'm really looking forward to the new student joining Class A." The little brat of the Julian family still resented the Ivy family's dominance, and his father likely had a grudge as well. Despite his harsh words, Percival was likely too proud to refuse a chance to gain face by sponsoring a student to herI's main campus. As for Julian, he no longer interested me. What did it matter if there were more girls in class? With one Dalise, I could make my father see Percival's wolfish ambition. This was a deal worth making. I was the daughter of the Ivy family, and since I already knew my future, I couldn't just obediently play the background role for others. The Julian family moved quickly. Just 3 days later, Dalise stood at the front of the class, wearing herI's uniform, giving her self-introduction. She seemed somewhat uneasy, her dark eyes frequently darting toward Julian and Ethan. After a while, she hesitantly asked, Teacher, can I sit next to Ivy?" "No," I replied leisurely, reclining in my chair. "I don't even drink tea." Dalise stood awkwardly at the front, her face stiff, unsure of what to do with her hands and feet. Julian, beside her, clenched his jaw, his right hand gripping a pen so tightly that the veins stood out. "Ivy, you're the one who allowed Dalise to transfer into the main campus. Why are you humiliating her in front of everyone now? When did you become so narrow-minded and mean-spirited?" Percival had spoken the truth. Over the years, taking advantage of the Ivy family's influence, Julian's life had been smooth, and I had been at his beck and call. But Julian really seemed to have forgotten his family name. Dalise was only in the main campus because of him. Was I just slapping her face? "You two really deserve each other." I raised my hand to indicate. Teacher, I'll gladly give up my seat for the new student. The seat next to Ethan is free. I'll sit there." Julian stared at me in disbelief. Ivy. What do you mean by this? I mean, met out a well sigh. I'm switching seats. There was no need for Dalise to go to such lengths to separate me from Julian. She liked collecting scrap. And I was happy to help her. Julian's lips tightened. His voice laced with restrained anger. Ivy. Does it have to be this embarrassing over something so trivial? I said nothing more. Quickly packing up my things. The vein on Julian's forehead throbbed. Clearly at the limit of his patience. Ivy. There's a limit to how much nonsense you can stir up. After switching seats. You'll never be able to sit next to me again. Are you really going to do this out of spite and sit next to Ethan? Julian gritted his teeth. You two are from completely different worlds. Ethan's seat was in the row behind. With his arms crossed. He fixed a cold gaze on Julian. He was about to speak when I had already grabbed my bag and stood up. Julian, you're not one of us. Hangdi's top-class students were all the best in a city. Being simply rich wouldn't get you in. Julian was an outsider who had only glimpsed the sky from the outside because of the winds that carried him. Dalise gladly took my seat. Her slender back straightened. But no matter how eager she was to learn, it couldn't hide the fact that she couldn't keep up with the main campus pace. She struggled to grasp the key points in class, even needing Julian to remind her when it was time to turn the page in the textbook. As a result, Julian spent his free time tutoring Dalise. His body hovered closely to the blushing, embarrassed girl, and I happened to catch a glimpse of the countdown to the college entrance exams on the wall. Not too much. Not too little, exactly 100 days. It had taken me years to pull Julian up to third place in our grade. Where would Dalise be able to push him? Julian clearly hadn't realized he was holding a hot potato. And the comments only grew more frantic. Why is the second female lead changing the plot again? Wasn't she supposed to accept the heroine's request to sit together, and then use the tutoring excuse to belittle the heroine? Eventually failing the college exams because she was trying to play both sides? Although the romance between the hero and heroine is great, I'm so worried he'll follow in the sec and female lead's footsteps. The second female lead is playing hard to get. Huh? Sitting next to Eve and just to piss off the hero. So petty. As for Ethan, the male lead, after half-thoroughly listening to a lesson, he slouched in his seat and slept through 2 periods. His book looked brand new, clearly not one that had been read often, and his notes were pitifully sparse. Probably because Julian and Dalise's study sessions were boring. The comments started chatting about me and Ethan again. The male lead's a pig spirit in disguise. Huh? He sleeps so much. Doesn't even turn over in his seat. You're overestimating him. If he had the guts to sleep next to the second female lead, would he be celibate for life? Bro. Wake up. If you keep sleeping, your cover's blown. The genius identity won't be a secret much longer. Did I need to hide my genius status? I came first every time. Flipping through my notebook, an absurd thought suddenly crossed my mind. I stared at the back of Ethan's head for a few minutes. When the math teacher reached a difficult problem, I grabbed his arm from under his headrest. Teacher. He knows how to do it. Ethan, whose forehead had just thudded into the desk, froze for a moment as he looked at his hand raised high. Still groggy from sleep, the teacher nodded in satisfaction. Ethan, please solve the problem. Afan sat up straight, glancing at me with a half-smile. Immature. His solution was clear and his handwriting soared. Graceful and fluid. Sure enough, Ethan scored higher than me in every exam and competition, not because he couldn't score higher, but because he only wanted to score that much. While I struggled to climb the ranks, he was carefully managing his scores. Friday, our weekly parent-child day. The cafeteria would close, and lunch became each family's responsibility. Officially, having fulfilled my obsession, the school claimed it was to strengthen family bonds. In reality, it had turned into a stage for the parents' vanity and social competition. As usual, Julian's mother arrived early. Barely halfway through the last class. She was already standing in the hallway. Makeup flawless. Holding 2 elegant lunch boxes and a small basket of fruit. She smiled sweetly at me. Ivy, your father couldn't make it today. Could he? Same as always, I brought you a serving. she said with a wink. All your favorites. And walnut red date soup too good for the brain and energy. Like a well-rehearsed play. Her son followed her cue. Eat it while it's hot. Julian said smoothly. My mom's been busy since morning. Just for you. Looking back now, I can only call myself foolish to have been swayed by such transparent gestures. A meal from Margaret. A word of kindness from Julian. And in return the Ivy family's support tells the public validation that our two families were close. Across the room, Dalise sat alone. Her back radiating quiet desolation. It was the harvest season. And of course her family couldn't leave the fields to bring her lunch. From time to time, she turned to glance at Julian. Her eyes soft and pitiful. But under Margaret's watchful gaze, Julian didn't so much as look her way. Just as I was about to remind him that a good deed should be done to the end, another plain lunchbox appeared on my desk. A fawn leaned lazily against the table, nudging Margaret's cartoon one aside. First meal from your new desk mate. You can't possibly refuse. Right? New desk mate? Margaret's smile almost faltered. The class changed seats? Nope. Ethan sprawled into the chair beside me. Ivy's just being considerate, letting Julie and demonstrate his deep, charitable devotion to the poor and needy. He jerked his chin toward Dalise's back. Julian's hand-picked new partner. Dalise's shoulders stiffened. That's not true. She murmured. I just thought I could sit with Ivy. She's too smart. And kind. Huh. If you're going to lie, at least try. Asan drawled. There's an empty seat beside the top student. Yet you fight to sit next to the eternal runner-up? He tilted his head, mock innocent. What's the problem? Not as good in grades? Or in family background? Dalise's lips trembled. I just think girls can talk more easily with each other. Oh. Ethan drew out the word, tone dripping with mischief. Hear that? Julian? She says you're not a man. I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. Even finding the eternal runner-up jab oddly endearing. Julian's face turned scarlet. The live comments flared across my vision. Wait. What's happening? Why's the second male lead acting out of character too? Are they trying to overturn the whole male-female dynamic? Chaos level unlocked, ultimate love polygon. Just as the tension peaked, Diana came jogging in, clutching a thermos box. I'm so sorry, she said breathlessly. The school's bigger than I thought. And the soup took longer to finish. You must be starving? Her words trailed off when she noticed the two lunch boxes already on my desk. I turned to Ethan, whose hands were empty, and handed him the thermos. Here, try some of my family's cooking. Diana's meals are rare treasures. At least when guests from Julian's family came to visit. Father always had the servants prepare the dishes, never Diana herself. Ethan accepted it graciously. Then I owe you a thank you, Diana. Relief softened her face as she took a seat nearby. Even after we'd finished eating, she didn't seem eager to leave, as she cleaned the now empty containers. I smiled. Diana, how about I show you around the campus? It'll help next time you visit. She blinked at me in surprise, as if to make sure she'd heard right, before finally stammering. Oh, of course. I'd love that. When Father couldn't come to school, it was always Uncle Wu who delivered my meals. This was Diana's first time visiting Hangdi's main campus as a parent. Ivy, done eating already? Margaret forced a polite smile, but her eyes were sharp. Diana's arrival meant she'd lost her last chance to cozy up to the Ivy family. Out of respect for an elder, I gave a brief nod and led Diana out. Once we reached the playground, she glanced around cautiously before lowering her voice. Ivy, maybe it's not my place to say this, but you can't stay involved with the Julian family anymore. A chill rippled through me. Something must have gone wrong at the company. Perhaps my closeness with Julian had led my father to deal too leniently with them. Diana went on gently, worried I might misunderstand. I don't understand business. But every time your father mentions the Julians, he frowns. He spends whole nights in his study with the lights on. Barely eats a thing. Old Wu said some of the projects signed to them went south. She hesitated, then added. He didn't tell you didn't want to distract you from exams. But you're not a child anymore. Ivy. I just don't want you trusting the wrong people. I squeezed her hand. Diana. Thank you for telling me. Please tell my father this, handle everything with caution. From this day on, the Ivy family and the Julian family have no further ties. No more leverage. No more weaknesses left for them to exploit. For the next few weeks, father was too busy to even come home. With the Ivy family's countermove, the Julians' fortunes naturally began to crumble. I remember seeing Julian at the stairwell one afternoon, sunlight pouring over his shoulders, gilding his hair in gold. Just like the first time we met. Back then, his family had only just struck it rich. Percival and Margaret were eager to make connections, knocking on doors and smiling through rejection. When they finally reached Towers, they wore identical expressions of flattery and unease. Father pulled me behind him, frowning. How many times have I told you? Never open the door without asking. I made a face at him, then turned and there Julian was, standing in the doorway, drenched in light. Margaret nudged him forward with a bright smile. They're about the same age, let them be friends. Father's tone was polite but distant. This girl's been spoiled by me. Temper's not the best. Margaret waved her hands. Oh, that's fine. Arthur. Our boy's mild as a lamb. Julian reached out his hand, voice still childish. Hi. I'm Julian. Do you want to be friends? He said at first. I didn't force him. Now, standing under that same sunlight, Julian looked at me and said, Ivy, can we talk? It was the same line he always used when he wanted to coax me out of anger. Be good, Ivy. Let's talk. Okay? Don't ignore me. But now, there was nothing more to say between us. Back and forth. It was either about profits or grievances. I turned my gaze away and continued walking downstairs. Julian grabbed my wrist. Ivy. How long are you going to keep acting like this? Do you really think it's necessary to let our petty disagreements ruin the peace between our families? My parents treat you like their own daughter. Don't you fear breaking their hearts? Julian. You're so hypocritical it disgusts me. You bind emotions to interests, and measure relationships with gains and losses. I shook off his grip. How can anyone take everything for themselves? You can't untangle the mess. So I'll help you choose to follow your heart. Julian, feeling suffocated by the pressure from both the Ivy family's influence and my own arrogance, decided to cast away not only the Ivy family's support but also the years of affection he had for me. He looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. Ivy, do you really want to force me to choose? Julian, is this really the time to talk about this? A Thon's teasing voice came from behind. I just heard the homeroom teacher mention your drop in scores for the second mock exam. If you stay in your little love nest much longer, you might not even get to choose your university. He tilted his chin toward the board. Want to go see? The rankings are about to be posted. What's the point? I had been second for years. He gestured for me to follow him downstairs. From now on, let me be the second. This kid. He's controlling the scores again. Julian's rank had indeed dropped, but it wasn't as bad as Ethan had made it sound. After all, he had built a solid foundation in the past few years. The problem was that his weak subjects, math and physics, were now showing their effects, holding him back. But his pressure was clearly not just about his grades. For several days, Julian had been downcast, his brow furrowed, a stark contrast to his usual demeanor. The comments likened him to a taut string, one end tied to the family's interests and the pressure from his parents, the other end tied to Dalise, who had pinned all her hopes on him. Since transferring from the branch school to the main campus, Dalise's grades had consistently been at the bottom of the class. Ifan and I had already decided their fate in the class, and Julian naturally became Dalise's only lifeline. Those spring water eyes of hers were always filled with hope, constantly looking to Julian for support. Ethan leaned in, propping his chin, following my gaze. What are you looking at? Does the answer to the question appear on the back of his head? I shot him a glance. Stay away. You don't have the answer on your face either. Ethan flushed quickly, then muttered under his breath in defiance, Of course I do. The comments were laughing out loud. Of course you do. You're always my first choice. Looks like the sharp-tongued gourd finally cracked. So much fighting and scrambling. I'm starting to ship the side couple. They're evenly matched. They're destined. Yeah. Julian and I were never on equal terms. His disadvantage was his family background, and mine was in emotions. On the day of the third mock exam, the rain came pouring down, and Julian didn't show up at school. He was crouching outside my door, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes soaked, looking like a pitiful stray dog. When he saw me, a spark suddenly lit up in his eyes. Ivy. Let's stop fighting. Okay? I was wrong this time. I won't do it again. Please. Show some mercy and help the Julian family. Help my father. Raindrops fell from the edge of his umbrella, soaking Julian's already wet shoulders. He didn't move. Just stared at me. Unblinking. It was the same look Dalise gave him, helpless and full of hope. I asked him, what happened to Julian's father? Julian opened his mouth, but no sound came out. How laughable. The vile things Percival had done. Even he couldn't speak of them. Yet here he stood, demanding that I let go of the very culprit who wanted to destroy the Ivy family. His self-righteous stance was exactly the same as when he demanded I let Dalise into Hengdi's main campus. Julian grabbed my shoulders, and the rain kept dripping from his wet hair. Ivy. You can't treat me like this. You can't treat the Julian family like this. Then why have you treated me and the Ivy family like this? Julian. You've used me for so many years. Schemed against the Ivy family for so long. Did you never think this day would come? Did you never think the boomerang would hit you back? The pain was only right. Julian. This is what you deserve. This is what the Julian family deserves. Percival's actions quickly spread throughout the circle. After both the tax inspection and business inspection arrived, he was taken along with his office computer and company documents. My father was taken in. The Julian family collapsed. And Julian's days at school became unbearable. The label of ungrateful was firmly nailed to his name. And everywhere he went, people whispered behind his back, Julian's state was bad. Much like Dalise's grades. Once, the male and female leads had sat together, advancing towards a bright future. Now, they seemed more like a pair of bitter, estranged lovers. Although they hadn't openly torn their faces, the comments told me everything. Dalise blamed Julian for letting her down, for not changing her fate. Julian resented her for suddenly appearing in his life, disrupting all his plans. An invisible wall had risen between them. The ship of the couple everyone was rooting for seemed doomed to fail. At the graduation dinner after the college entrance exam, Julian and Dalise both missed it in perfect synchronization. Classmates shared their exam results, talked about the universities they were accepted to, filled with longing and excitement for their future university lives. During the meal, someone mentioned Dalise, the only student in the top class who had opted for a vocational school. Apparently, having fulfilled what I'd say, she chose a nearby, relatively unknown school. Julian's results were also disappointing, and he would most likely have to find connections to switch cities and retake the year. The male and female leads, once so well matched, now seemed to be walking down different paths. After giving his toast, Ethan returned to sit beside me. His cheeks flushed a soft peach pink. He pulled out his phone and showed me an enlarged picture. In the photo, his admission letter looked almost identical to mine, except for our names. The golden letters and the red official seal clearly announced, not only had we both gotten into the same university, we had also chosen the same major. The shadow of always being second again loomed over me. But Ethan, unusually serious, said, I told myself, as long as you look back at me once, I'll take the remaining 100 steps. Ivy, you can always be the number one. And, on the eve of New Year's Eve, Henry came downstairs. Impeccably dressed. I was standing by the window, putting up paper cuttings. He walked over to me. I won't be home for the new year. Will you be all right on your own? Before I could even ask why, he said, she's pregnant. It's my child. I'm going to be with her. My hand trembled, and the red paper slipped from my fingers, fluttering soundlessly to the floor. Why are you telling me this now, of all times? He said nothing, and in that silence, I knew our marriage was over. My voice was dry, almost foreign to my own ears. Henry. Let's get a divorce. Arya, haven't I treated you well enough? Why do you want a divorce? Even the calmest, most rational person would snap upon hearing that. I grabbed the ashtray off the coffee table and hurled it at him. Why? I screamed. Why? Henry. You've been with another woman, how can you even ask me that? Don't you think this is ridiculous? He didn't move. The glass shattered across the floor, and a bruise blossomed on his forehead. Still unsatisfied, I threw every book and magazine within reach at him. He didn't even flinch, just stood there, motionless, like a statue. Finally, having fulfilled my desire, I threw the vase. The flowers inside were the ones I'd picked from the garden that very morning. Before we married, Henry's house had been cold and austere. Everything in shades of gray and blue, lifeless. Every week, I would bring home fresh flowers to make the place feel a little warmer. After our wedding, I had redesigned every corner of this villa myself, every lamp, every cushion, every painting hand picked to turn it into a home. Our home. And now, that warmth lay in ruins. Destroyed by my own hands. Henry just stood there, watching me like I was a madwoman. His gaze was distant, unreadable, exhausted. I sank to the floor, covering my face as sobs tore out of me. After a long while, he stepped closer. He picked me up, tidied the sofa, and sat me down. Kneeling in front of me, he looked up, eyes soft with something that almost resembled pain, and brushed away my tears with his thumb. Arya, don't do this. You're hurting me. Through my tears, I caught my reflection in his eyes, disheveled, pathetic. I froze for a moment. How did we become like this? I wiped my face and forced my voice to steady. Do you still remember what you promised me? You said we'd stay together for life, never part, never betray each other, until old age. But Henry, it's only been 3 years since our wedding, and you've already broken that promise. How long have you been seeing her? He turned his head away, avoiding my eyes. Almost a year. A bitter laugh escaped me. So it's been that long already. Then why tell me now? Why not just keep it hidden forever? He sat beside me, lit a cigarette, and exhaled slowly. The smoke blurred his sharp features. I didn't want to lie to you. Didn't want to lie. What a noble, hollow excuse. If you'd stopped loving me, you could have told me honestly. We could have divorced. I wouldn't have begged or clung to you. But you chose to betray me instead. She's in her early 20s, young. Sweet. She's not like you. She doesn't refuse the gifts or the money I give her. She's clingy. Loves to act cute. There was a faint light in his eyes when he said it. A tenderness I hadn't seen in a long time. But when his gaze met mine again, it dimmed. But Arya, you don't do any of that. You make everything feel bland. I'm your husband, the closest person to you. But Henry, I've always been this way, reserved, quiet, slow to show warmth. It's how I was raised. Shaped by years of distance and restraint. I don't know how to be dependent. I hate troubling others. Even with the person closest to me, I keep score too carefully. I was trying to change. To lean on you. But when I needed you most after the car accident. When I was lying in the hospital. Calling your phone, where were you? Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You make sweet and sour ribs. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. It's tomato and egg stir-fry. Honestly, I'm sick of those dull, repetitive days. I didn't understand. Out of all the dishes on the table, only 1 or 2 were my favorites, the rest were his. So why did he fixate on the ones I liked as if they defined me? Arya, you're like a bowl of plain porridge, tasteless, but hard to throw away. She's different. She's like candy, sweet, addictive. A smile curved his lips. Soft and nostalgic. Full of affection. She's bold. Took me to an amusement park. Went straight for the haunted house. Hands on her hips. Saying she wasn't scared. The moment we stepped inside, she jumped into my arms and told me to hold her. Her heartbeat was so fast, thump, thump, thump. She wrapped her arms around my neck, blushing, and kissed me first. I should have stopped her. But I didn't. Stop it. My chest ached so badly it felt numb. Henry. Please. I begged. Don't say another word. The living room fell into a heavy, Suffocating silence. Then Henry's phone rang. He pulled it out, glanced at me once, and without hesitation, answered in front of me. A girl's syrupy voice came through the receiver. I'm hungry. When are you coming back? Hungry? As Henry's eyes met mine, I began rummaging frantically. The baby and I are both hungry. I'll come feed you soon. A chill crept over me, spreading through every vein. I pressed my temples, trying to think. What was I looking for? My phone. Yes, my phone. What if I missed an important message at work? What if I missed an important call? Be good, baby. What? Listen to me. I'll be there with you soon. Honey. I love you. Mwah. I tried desperately to block out the sounds around me. How I wished I could be deaf right now. But I wasn't. Henry's carefree and cheerful voice surged into my ears like a tide. I held my breath until the pressure in my palm made blood ooze. And only then did I start to calm down little by little. At some point, Henry ended the call and walked up behind me. They're waiting for me over there. I should leave. I'll talk to my mom. If you don't want to go to the old house tomorrow, you can stay here. He paused before adding, do you want me to call the nanny to keep you company for the new year? I don't think that would be right. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Everyone is supposed to be with their family. Henry muttered to himself. So, he did know tomorrow was New Year's Eve and that people should be with their families. What about me? Then? To him, was I nothing but a stranger? An irrelevant person? I grabbed the kettle and poured myself a cup of hot water. The warm liquid slid down my throat, driving away half of the chill in my body. Henry. Let's get a divorce. At the entrance, Henry paused, his movement of putting on his shoes suddenly still. I promise to treat you well for life. Arya. If you want. You will always be Mrs. Henry. We can go back to how we were. And what about her? I'll buy a villa and settle her there. So she won't disturb you. Henry left. The once lively living room was now empty, with only me left behind. Before he left, Henry came over and wiped away my tears. He used the same lips that had kissed me 1,000 times to say hurtful words. Arya. Be good and listen. She won't fight with you for anything. I numbly walked up the stairs and back to my room. I stared at our wedding photo. The girl in the picture was smiling so happily, her face full of bliss. I turned and washed my face in the bathroom. The woman in the mirror looked awful. Her eyes were red, and her face streaked with tear stains. I slowly raised my hand. Arya. This isn't you. Cold water splashed against my face, and I told myself I shouldn't be sad. But after so many years, how could I not be sad? I collapsed onto the bed, wishing everything from just moments ago had been a dream. If I could only wake up. Yesterday's events lingered in my mind, reminding me that it was all real. My phone vibrated. It was a call from Henry's mother. I didn't answer. I just stared at the computer screen. After a while, the phone rang again. I hesitated for a moment before pressing the answer button. Arya. It's New Year's today. Remember to come back early with Henry. I held the phone, unsure how to respond. Arya? Didn't Henry say anything to you? What's wrong? Did you two argue? That brat won't even answer his phone. It's nothing. Well, that's good. Just remember to come back early with Henry. Some things are too hard to explain over the phone. It's better to talk face to face. But before I headed to Henry's family home, I needed to stop by the coffee shop. The streets that had once been bustling were now unusually quiet because of the new year. I searched several shops, but they were all closed. The cold wind cut sharply against my skin, and I instinctively pulled my coat tighter around me. Just when I thought I wouldn't be able to get anything printed, I spotted one shop still open. Maybe my luck wasn't as bad as I thought. The shopkeeper asked what I needed to print and if I needed help. I politely smiled and declined. She paused for a moment, probably wondering who would come to print a divorce agreement on New Year's. She quickly bound the documents and handed them to me. Happy New Year, she said. My hand froze as I took the payment. She was the first person to wish me a Happy New Year today. Not even my family, not even Henry, had said it. My eyes suddenly welled up, and I whispered, Happy New Year. I stepped out of the shop, breathed a sigh of relief, and placed the documents in my bag. I called Henry. Are you going to the old house? He's in the shower, so he can't take the call. Is there something I can pass on to him? It wasn't Henry who answered the phone, but his little lover. There was a clear sense of provocation in her voice. Please tell Henry his mom wants him to come home. At Henry's family home, his mother was busy preparing food in the kitchen. I entered, carrying the things I had bought. Why are you the only one back? Where's that brat Henry? I had no answer to his parents' questions. Henry's busy. He'll be here later. Busy on New Year's Eve? I've already told that brat to come home early. Henry's father pulled out his phone and was about to call Henry. I didn't stop him. Nor did I care. I turned and went to help in the kitchen. Usually, Henry's parents were nice to me. And today was a special day. There was no need to make things awkward. I decided to leave the talk about Henry and me for another day. After a busy afternoon, Henry still hadn't shown up. Just as it was getting dark and we were about to sit down to eat, Henry finally arrived. But he didn't come alone. Mom had unforgettable session. Dad, I'm back. Henry carried gifts in one hand. And with the other, he held the girl's hand. He probably thought I had said something to his parents. The sound of fireworks outside burst in time. It was as if the fireworks were celebrating Henry and her finally being together. The fireworks faded. Henry's parents exchanged glances. And it was clear they noticed something unusual. It's already this late. And you still know to come back? Henry's mother cast a cold glance at the girl beside him. On such an important day, why did you bring an outsider back? The girl seemed startled and instinctively leaned closer to Henry. Henry frowned at me, seemingly not wanting to see me. A few seconds later, he smiled and raised the hand holding the girl's. Mom, Dad. She's not an outsider. Her name is Sophia. We're together now. The words hit like a storm. And I was the only one left awkwardly sitting there. Henry's father slammed the teacup down onto the table. You brat, your wife's right here. Do you even know what kind of nonsense you're spewing? Henry lowered his gaze, hesitating for a moment. Who hasn't been young and impulsive before? And whoever said a person must love only one person in a lifetime? He looked deeply into the girl's eyes. His tone steady and resolute. Sophia and I truly love each other. I'm serious about her, this isn't some passing fancy. That line sounded painfully familiar. Years ago, when Henry's parents agreed to our relationship but objected to our marriage. They told him marriage wasn't just about two people, it was about two families. The Henrys were a prestigious family in Deep City. And they wanted their son to marry a woman of equal status. Someone who could elevate his future. But my own family was a wreck. I'd been abandoned and by my parents. With no one behind me. I had only myself. Mom, Dad, I truly love Arya. Arya, don't run away from me. You don't have to do anything, just don't step back. Please? Back then, his eyes held only me. He was so earnest, so sincere, so impossibly good. I couldn't bear to let him face everything alone. I didn't want to become his burden, his dead weight. During that time, I worked tirelessly, heading fulfillments, desperate to prove to his parents that even without a powerful family background, I could still stand beside their son with my own strength. And eventually, I succeeded. But now, Henry, you've made me lose completely. Henry's father was shaking with rage, his finger trembling as he pointed at his son. You unfilial child. Are you trying to kill me with anger? Then came a sharp slap, landing hard across Henry's left cheek. Henry's mother's eyes filled with distress as she saw the blood on her son's lip. She quickly grabbed her husband's arm and turned coldly to Henry. Why are you just standing there? Get on your knees and apologize to your father. Sophia immediately stepped forward, blocking Henry from his mother's glare. Uncle, helpUse. Auntie. Please don't blame Henry, it's all my fault. And since when does an outsider get to meddle in our family's affairs? Henry's mother looked her up and down, her gaze sharp. You look like a girl from a good family. Have you ever heard of the words propriety, righteousness, integrity, and shame? Why couldn't you choose something decent to do, instead of something so disgraceful? Sophia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Her lips quivered as she lowered her head. Silent. As though she'd suffered the greatest injustice in the world. Henry moved as if to defend her. But Sophia quickly caught his arm and shook her head. I'm fine. Don't argue with your mother because of me. Henry gently stroked her hair and helped her sit down. His voice soft and full of concern. Dad. Mom, you've always wanted a grandchild. Haven't you? His father frowned. What do you mean by that? Sophia's pregnant. The baby's mine. The living room fell into a suffocating silence. Everyone's eyes turned to me, waiting for my reaction. It was Sophia who finally broke it. I know I'm in the wrong. And I don't expect your forgiveness. Her hand came to rest on her belly as she looked toward me. I never wanted to compete with you, Arya. Or take your place as Henry's wife. I just love him too much. I only wish to safely give birth to our child. I know Arya can't have children anymore. If you're willing, once the baby is born, you can raise him as your own. He'll be yours in every way. Such thoughtful, magnanimous words, each one a perfectly calculated move. If Arya doesn't want to see me, that's fine. I can leave. I don't want to ruin your marriage because of me, nor make Henry argue with his mother on my account. My hand moved instinctively to my abdomen. Once, there had been a baby there too. If not for that accident, the child would have been born months ago. A single car crash had taken my baby and with it, my ability to ever carry another. Henry once told me he didn't like children anyway. That he only wanted a life for the two of us. I always knew he was lying. He adored children. And now, he finally got what he wanted. Henry's mother sighed, her tone softening. No matter what, the child she's carrying is still part of the Henry family's bloodline. Arya, maybe, let her have the baby first. If you don't want to raise it, your father-in-law and I can. Henry's father added. Arya, what Henry did is wrong. But he's our only son. The Henry family can tend with him. Henry's expression was complicated. If you can't accept it, we can get a divorce. I felt like a lamp that had gone out, surrounded by people waiting for me to shine again, waiting for me to get them an answer. It was clear this New Year's Eve dinner wasn't going to happen. I calmly rose from my chair and untied my apron. All right. Have it your way. Henry's pupils constricted, as if surprised by my composure. His parents praised me for being understanding, a good wife. I said nothing. Reaching into my bag, I took out the divorce papers and handed them to Henry. Let's get a divorce. You can marry her. He didn't take them. His gaze lingered on me, heavy with countless emotions. Have you really thought this through? I've already signed. I hope you'll do the same soon so we can finalize everything. I placed the papers on the table, not bothering to look at their faces again. Then I grabbed my bag and walked straight out. New Year's Eve was scorching hot. Fireworks filled the city skies. And in the middle of it all, Deep City saw its first snowfall. I held out my hand, catching a snowflake in my palm. The cold seeped deep into my bones, making me shiver. The world was alive with noise and celebration, but the loneliness and chill belonged only to me. Arya. It was Henry. He had followed me out. I steadied myself before turning back to face him. Give me a little time, I said quietly. I'll move out soon. He stood 5 paces away, tall and composed, the streetle twilight casting a gold and glow across his sharp features. It took him a long while before he finally managed to speak. I'm sorry. What good was sorry now? I broke my promise, he said hoarsely. I failed your love. I can't give you the life you wanted, the forever you deserved. I was a fool. I'll sign the divorce papers. Good. Just as I was about to turn and leave, Henry called after me again. Arya. What do you want as compensation? A car? A house? Money? As long as it's something you want, if it's within my power, I'll do everything I can to make it up to you. I looked up at the snow swirling against the night sky, forcing down the bitterness in my chest. I want the largest villa in the Bay Area downtown. All right. I want 50% of the shares under your name. Can you give me that? I want 100 million in cash. Can you give me that? Henry met my gaze. As long as you ask, I'll give it to you. I laughed, though there was no warmth in it. So in your eyes, all the hurt you've caused me can be solved with money? He replied evenly. Money is all I have left to give you. Then what if I ask you to walk away with nothing? The air froze between us. Henry frowned, standing tall and rigid. After a long silence, he said quietly, Arya, I'm sorry. I can agree to everything else. But not that. My parents care too much about reputation. If I leave with nothing, it will tarnish the Henry family name. Forgive me, can't do that. The wind and snow grew heavier. He shoved the umbrella into my hands and silently walked away, fading from my sight. When I woke up, I began packing my things. A door closed downstairs. It was Henry. Back again. Minutes later, he knocked on my door. I brought you breakfast. Eat something before you finish packing. My stomach rumbled. I didn't refuse. On the rectangular dining table sat steamed dumplings, millet porridge, and the soy milk I liked. Henry sat across from me, hesitant. You don't have to move out, he said. You can keep this house. I sipped my porridge. No need. There were too many memories here, good and bad. I didn't want it to become a prison that kept me from moving on. People heal faster when they leave the places that hurt them. Henry's brow furrowed. Take better care of yourself. Stop eating instant noodles, it's not healthy. He must have seen the empty packaging in the trash. Last night I came home late. It was New Year's. Delivery apps were closed. And I was too tired to cook. But why was he still worrying about me? When we were on the verge of divorce? I picked up a dumpling, dipped it in vinegar. The taste was still the same, just how I liked it. But somehow, it felt unbearably sour in my mouth. I moved into an apartment I bought long before I met Henry. It wasn't big, but it was enough, not so little that I'd end up on the streets. People always said to buy a car before a house. But to me, cars were just tools. A house, though, that was a refuge. Just as I finished unpacking, an unfamiliar number called. Arya, could you come see me one last time? I hesitated by the window for a long while before deciding to go. At the restaurant, the woman across from me was elegantly dressed, poised, and sharp. My biological mother. She flipped through the menu. What would you like to eat? I said nothing. She didn't seem surprised. How about braised fish and sweet and sour ribs? You used to love those as a child. I cut her off coldly. Did you ask me here just to have a meal? Grace froze for a moment, then closed the menu. Have you been well lately? How's Henry's family treating you? How's Henry treating you? I countered. And you? How have you been all these years? I've been fine. The meal was tasteless, heavy with silence. Suddenly, Grace placed a bank card in front of me. The password is your birthday. I know you resent me, hate me, but this is just a small token from a mother. I clenched my hands. I don't need it. After all these years of absence. Now she wanted to show concern? This was her idea of motherly love? They say bungee jumping gives you a chance to be reborn. So I went. I used to be terrified of heights. Too scared even to look up at the platform while people screamed from above. But now, I wanted to see if falling could really make me feel alive again. The wind was fierce at the top, the view breathtaking. Before the staff even began the countdown, I closed my eyes and jumped. The wind howled past my ears as my body plummeted, as though I were falling into an endless abyss. Then came the rebound, violent, disorienting. At the peak of the bounce, as I fell again, I thought I might die. So I screamed until my voice broke, until all the pain and frustration poured out. When it was over, there was no rebirth waiting for me. People like to think they can find sudden clarity in a single moment, that travel or bungee jumping can change everything. But real awakening doesn't come that easily. Unless you've suffered, struggled in the mud, cried through endless night show, can you possibly claim enlightenment? Everyone wishes for a smooth life. But no one's life truly is. I had barely returned home that evening when the hospital called. Miss Arya, your mother is in critical condition. Please come as soon as possible. My phone slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a thud. I stumbled through the corridors until I found the right room. Grace lay pale and frail on the hospital bed, an oxygen mask over her face. I barely recognized her. Just days ago, she'd seemed perfectly fine. Arya, why are you here? Her tone turned cold. defensive. Leave. I don't want to see you. I don't need your pity. I sat down beside her. If the hospital hadn't called, do you really think I would have come? I had hated her. Resented her for abandoning me back then. But I had never wished her dead. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't truly hated her for a long time. The thorn in my heart had already dissolved. Grace's voice rasped. I never wanted to give you up, Arya. Your father refused to let me take you. I fought him, screamed. Cried, but it was useless. I thought about it calmly. And I realized your father was right. You'd only suffer if you stayed with me. I'd just lost my job, how could I possibly support you? My work hours were long. I couldn't take care of you. Your father, on the other hand, had a stable income and a proper job. You'd have a better life with him. In the end, I gave in and sent him child support every month. I did try to see you once, she added softly. But he refused to let me. Later, when your father remarried, I wanted to take you away. But when I finally saw you, you told me you hated me, that you never wanted to see me again. All these years, I've only dared to watch you from the shadows. From afar. That was because I thought she had abandoned me. I never knew the truth. If I could do it all over again, she whispered, I would have taken you with me. Tears of regret slipped from the corners of her eyes as the heart monitor shrieked sharply. With tears streaming down my face, I forced a trembling smile. I stopped hating you a long time ago. Mom. But she couldn't hear me anymore. She would never hear me again. I buried my face beside her hospital bed and wept like a child. Unable to stop. The phone rang again, and again it was Henry. I didn't answer. There was nothing left for us to say. The day I went to the hospital, I saw him. Not just him, but also his parents. And Sophia. They were all there for her prenatal checkup, doting on her like she was a precious jewel. Terrified that she might trip or bump into something. Unlike me, herI. When I had the car accident and lost our baby, no one was there. I had to sign the surgical consent myself, trembling in pain. And where was Henry then? I didn't know. His phone was off the entire night. He didn't show up until the next morning. He knelt by my bed, slapping himself, saying he shouldn't have drunk so much. Shouldn't have been absent when it mattered most. Maybe he was with Sophia that night. Who knows? The phone wouldn't stop ringing. This time, it was a strange number. I picked up. Henry's drunken voice came through, low and slurred. Arya, where are you? Why haven't you come home yet? I'm drunk. I want your sweet rice wine balls. Arya, will you make them for me? A pause. Arya? Why aren't you saying anything? I looked out the window at the scattered city lights. You can ask Sophia to make them. Or the maid. Stop calling me. I don't want theirs. I want yours. Arya. Henry. I said his name evenly. Tomorrow at 10. We'll finalize the divorce at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Don't forget. There was a sharp crash of glass on the other end. But it no longer had anything to do with me. The next morning, I got up early. I'll pick you up, he said. No need. But he hung up before I could refuse again. He arrived quickly. Still the same man who once used to shield my head with his hand when I got into the car, afraid I might bump it. Only now, we were no longer the same. We sat in silence all the way there. Outside the window, the scenery blurred backward. The Civil Affairs Bureau was nearly empty. Few people there for divorces. Even so, we still waited. The moment the red seal pressed down, Henry and I ceased to be husband and wife. Walking out, I saw a couple holding hands, coming in to get their marriage certificate. For a second, my mind drifted. Henry and I had once come here the same way, full of hope, but our marriage had ended in failure. And now, we were here again, to bring it to an end. As I stepped down the long staircase, the sky was bright and blue. I felt strangely light. I'll drive you home, he offered. I smiled. That won't be necessary. This time, I truly meant it. Darling. Sophia waddled toward us, heavily pregnant, slipping her arm through Henry's to make a point. She didn't need to. I no longer loved him. What are you doing here? He asked. Did you forget? We said that after you and Arya finalized the divorce. We'd register our marriage today. Henry rubbed his temples. I remember. I didn't have the patience to watch their display. I turned to leave. Arya. Sophia called after me, smiling serenely. When Henry and I get married, I hope you'll come. After all, you're a mutual friend. I'm busy, I replied coolly. Not as free as you are. Before my mother passed away, she told me, if one day your marriage makes you unhappy, never settle. Never compromise. I raised you. Sent you to school not to make you someone's wife or someone's mother. Don't let a failed marriage destroy you. Never rely on a man to live your life. Become your best self. Find your own worth. She had pressed her last strength into my hand that day, placing her bank card into it once more. Arya. She whispered. I just want you to be happy. 6 months after I started working in London, Henry's mother came to see me. Arya. Please. Come back and see him. Auntie. I said quietly. Henry and I are over. I have no obligation to see him. She had once been an elegant woman, but now she looked much older, far from the graceful lady I remembered. Her eyes were red, voice trembling. Arya. I know Henry wronged you. We all did, but please. Just once for old time's sake, come see him. I'm begging you. Then she dropped to her knees before I could stop her. I reached to pull her up, but she wouldn't rise. You don't know, Arya. Sophia never loved Henry. She only wanted our money. Henry's mother went on to tell me Sophia had taken the 10 million the family gave her after childbirth and ran off with another man. Henry's dying. Arya. He talks about you every day. Please. Just see him once. I finally relented. Took 2 days off and flew back with her. The hospital reeked of disinfectant. Henry lay on the bed, pale as ash. When he saw me, he smiled faintly. Arya. It's good to see you again. I thought you'd never want to. Seeing him again, I felt nothing. No heartbreak. No rage. Just calm. He spoke on his own, as if to fill the silence. I know I look terrible. I brought this on myself. You must be laughing at me inside. Arya, seeing me like this. I sighed. Henry. Stop acting like a martyr. If you're sick, get treated properly. Don't make your parents suffer for your choices. His eyes reddened. It's useless. It can't be cured. According to Henry's parents, after the baby was born, Henry never once looked at him. The servant brought the baby before him. Henry coldly shouted. Who allowed you to bring him to me? Get out. This happened repeatedly. No one dared to bring up the baby again. I had seen the child chubby, fair, and utterly adorable. And it always made me think if my own child were still here, how wonderful that would be. Henry sat in his wheelchair, his lips pale. If that thing hadn't happened, would we be happy now? I thought to myself. No, once such an unworthy thought crosses your mind, it's only a matter of time before you fall into it. After the first time, there would be a second, and then countless more. It's like a man who loves smoking, you can't stop him. Even if there was no Sophia, there would have been someone else. Raindrops traced patterns down the window, and Henry looked up at me. I never really liked Sophia. It doesn't matter anymore. What was the point of defending